MP for North West Norfolk, James Wilder, who joins us now. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Chris.
Do you agree that the government had no choice but to put Norfolk into Tier 4?
Well, it's very disappointing that we have had to go into Tier 4 for people and businesses across West Norfolk and across the county at the end of a very tough year. But what we've seen is this new COVID variant has driven a rapid increase in cases. It's increased 65% week on week on the latest figures for West Norfolk. And our local hospitals are under pressure, and faced with that, then it's very disappointing, but inevitable that we would need to move up the tier system.
Does this tell us just that the new strain is particularly virulent, or is this a clue that perhaps people in Norfolk have got a bit complacent and weren't following all the guidelines?
No, I think what we're seeing across the southeast and east of England, and undoubtedly will spread across the country, is this new variant that's driven the level of increase that we're seeing here. Half of cases, I think Louise Smith said earlier on the programme, have been driven by that. So that's what's making a difference here. We were making progress as a county. People were following the guidance, and unfortunately, rather than looking at going down the tiers, we're now obviously in the top tier. So the focus for us all has to be to continue to play our part, follow the rules, hands, face, space. It's the simple rules that we've had for so long, and limit our contact with other people to try and reduce the transmission.
But these rules are so tough, aren't they, on a lot of people, a lot of businesses at the end of a difficult year, going into a new year. I mean, through this year, we've been used to saying Norfolk is below the national average. Suddenly, for the first time this year, really, we are in the tightest level of restrictions, the most severe restrictions. This is going to have a huge impact on people's lives, isn't it, and their jobs in Norfolk. Will they get the support they need to get through it?
It is incredibly tough, and I feel for all of the hospitality businesses, the personal care businesses, all of those retail, non-essential so-called retail, that have done such hard work to try and be COVID secure, who are going to have to close. There are grants there available for businesses in Tier 4 that are required to close. But I was at the Mother Goose, the Panto, at Princess Theatre in Hunstanton earlier this week, and there were rumours floating around then, and talking to the owner, he was pretty heartbroken because he's got a load of shows ready to go, which now won't be able to take place. And people like him and so many businesses across the county are now going to sort of have to shut up shop again for a period. And I feel really sorry for them. And yes, I'll continue to make sure support's there and available for businesses that are forced to close.
Do you expect schools to return in January as planned?
Well, I think what we learned from the first lockdown is how important it is to try and keep schools open for children. It's the most disadvantaged children who suffer when schools aren't open. So the government's putting in place as many measures as possible. They're introducing testing through secondary schools, and we're asking a huge amount of teachers over this Christmas period as well to be ready for that. And I want to thank all of them across West Norfolk and the county for that. I very much hope we'll be able to. I think what we've learned in the last week or so is that things can change very rapidly. So I think it's right that we plan that they do open, and then decisions will be taken nearer the time if that can definitely go ahead. I think that's the better approach than simply saying, we can't open schools. Like the Prime Minister tried with Christmas, to have a more extended Christmas bubble period. It was right to try and do that. Then when the facts changed, he sadly had to reduce the period for Christmas bubbles. I think that's a better way to look at these things.
Talking of changing approaches to things, I wonder whether now is the time to change the approach towards vaccines. I know some people are saying that maybe it's better to give people one dose and get to more people rather than giving the most vulnerable 2 doses of the vaccine. Is it worth now putting everything behind the vaccines, investing more and more money into that to get people vaccinated as quickly as possible? Because otherwise you're going to be spending the same amount of money just about supporting businesses that can't open, aren't you?
Yeah, vaccines are the way out of this. The vaccines being rolled out in Norfolk, in West Norfolk, at the St James Medical Practice. I think we have to be guided by the experts here. I've heard the ideas about giving half doses, but I think we go with the evidence here. And what's potentially exciting, is the news that Oxford submitted their final data to the regulator. I very much hope that vaccine will be approved. It's far easier to store. It doesn't need to be stored at minus 70 degrees and in such small batches. And if that's approved, then we can ramp up the programme quite significantly and vaccinate people, which is the way that we can come through this. And that's the hope that people should hang on to, even in this dark time that we're now about to go into.
And just to finish with, I know one issue you have spoken about a lot this year and campaigned on is Kings Lynn Town Football Club and football in general. It's outdoors. I think football clubs have, particularly at Norwich City, have proven that they can host crowds safely and securely and enforce social distancing. Isn't it a bit harsh to have the turnstiles closed once again when we know that sport and recreation does so much for people's mental health?
It does. I was at the walks for the Yeovil game. Great performance by Lynn. The sign of how rapidly things changed last week. I was chatting to Steve Cleave about whether the Boxing Day game would be able to go ahead and sell tickets. And at that point, there was no question that would. And then suddenly this new variant's been identified and actions had to be taken. I want to see fans back in grounds as soon as it's safe to do so. At the moment, we've got to try and minimise physical contact and interactions as much as possible. But as and when things can be done safely, then we should do so. But what we need to avoid at the moment is when there's a big spike in infections, doing anything that could increase them further.
North West Norfolk MP James Wild, thanks for talking to us this morning, and Merry Christmas. You're the man that christened Tim Sparrow, our producer. You christened him the COVID guru earlier this year, and you'll be pleased to know he's now got a high-vis jacket with that written on. We've bought him a Christmas present, so you've inspired that, if nothing else, this year, Jay. You've achieved that.
Oh, great. I'll put that on my report card.
James Wild, the MP for North West Norfolk, who, yes, was so impressed with Tim answering your COVID questions one morning. He called him the COVID guru, and now he's got it actually written on a high-vis jacket.